Hi my friends, today we will talk about Context API. I will try to explain why we need it and where it is used. React Context API is a way to effectively produce global variables that can be passed around. This is the alternative to prop drilling or moving props from grandparent to child to parent and so on. We all know prop drilling, but I still want to remind you what it was. Let's say we have a parent component like the one on the screen, and the other components are children of each other. At main component, let's assume that we made a request to an endpoint and a data was returned. Let's say we want to use this data in component 3. How do we do that? Can I send this data directly from main component to component 3? Of course, we cannot do that. But we need to send this data to component 3 somehow. We will do it with prop drilling method. Our target is to send the data to component 3. Firstly, we send data from main component to component 1, and then we send the data from component 1 to component 2. Finally, we send data from component 2 to component 3. Now I can easily use this data in component 3, but what would I do if I had hundreds of nested components? The prop drilling method would be quite tiring and complicated for us. At this point, ContextAPI saves us. The ContextAPI provides the opportunity to use the data in which component we want. I have a component called users. As you can see, it is just an empty component. And inside this component, I have another component called user info. In other words, user info is child of users component. Let's go to the app component. We have a data consisting of several objects, and I want to send this data to user info component. First of all, I create a folder called context in order to progress in an organized way, and I will create the context inside this folder. Let's say context.js, sorry, not folder, I need file context.js. Okay, let's start by importing the create context first. Create context, we will import it from React, and I will create a variable. Let's say example context, and we call the create context function. By the way, you can give any name to this variable, it doesn't matter. We actually created the context. We will go step by step. So I return to the app component. I will import the context I created, but to import it, I need to export this context. I need to export this context to import it in app component. So let's export it. I save it. Let's go to app.js. So we can import it here. Import example context. We will import it inside the context file, the inside context. Okay, I save it. Now I need to wrap the components that I'm going to use this Context API So I need to wrap the components. So let's say example context.provider. I can access the context API in all the components that I wrapped. I can also access the context in the components that are in the children state of the components I wrapped. In our scenario, this is the user's component we wrapped. I will send the data that I want to use in the components I had wrapped using the value keyword. For example, I will send a string for now. We will understand better in a moment. Let's say Turkey, India, United States, and I save it. From now on, I can access this value in the user's component and the components which are children of user's component. Now go back to the user info component. User info, children of user's component. Let's go to user info component. First of all, I import the user context hook from React. Import useContext. We will import it from React, and then I need to import the context I created. I mean this context. We will import it also. Example context from context. Okay, I save it. Now I create a variable and they use the useContext hook to get the values of example context. Let's say context equal useContext, the name of the context. In our case, it is example context. So first I will print the context to the console. We say console.log. We will print context. Let's write context. I save it, refresh the page, open the console. As you can see, I can get the context value of the component I wanted without using props. If I send the data instead of string expression, let's say let's send this data. I save it. I can easily access it thanks to useContext hook. Let's see that. I refresh the page. Okay, I can access the data objects. We can also send functions. I will create a button in the user's component and I trigger the function I created at the app component with this button, and I will change the background. Let's create a button. Change background. I save it, but I need to create a function inside this app component. Say function change background dot get dot document body dot style dot background color. This is just a simple example. Now let's send this function to the user's component within the value object. I copy the name, we add a comma, I save it. I need to use I I need to use context and the example context again inside the users component. So let's import them. Use context from React. I also need example context. Context. Okay. As you know, I need to create a variable. Let's say context. Use context. Okay. Example context. Okay. We have button here. Okay. I will add an onClick event to trigger this function, which comes via the context API. So let's say context dot change background. Name of the function. Okay, I copy and paste it, not to make mistake. Let's refresh the page. Okay, we get the data and function. When I click the button, I was able to make the background yellow. This was just an example to show that we can also send functions via ContextAPI. I hope it was helpful enough. This is the logic of useContext in general. I have seen more complex examples on the internet, but I tried to simplify useContext hook as much as I could. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.